Hey everybody, Boone Wyatt here with a 323 Concept Furniture Restoration. Today we're going to be looking at this beautiful antique rocker and how to replace the pressed cane in the middle seat that has broken loose. So we'll show you what techniques we use, and there's obviously probably 100 different ways to go about this, but without further ado, let's jump right in and we'll show you how we go about it. Alright, so starting out, what we want to do is the goal is to get the old pressed cane out of here first, right? So what I'm going to do first is go in with some scissors, and we're going to cut it out as close to the edge as I can, just to sort of get all the loose caning out of the way. And then after we do that, what I'm going to do is we're going to try to get some steam underneath the caning spline to help loosen it. That way it makes it a little bit easier when we go in with our caning spline to get it out of the groove. So the first thing I want to do, like I said, is drill some holes along the perimeter, and that's going to help us get the steam in certain areas. So to drill the holes, I don't want to just start drilling over the top. What I want to do first is I'm going to use a punch, and this is a cool spring-loaded punch. I'll put a link in the description for anybody that wants to find these. These are awesome tools for nail punches, and they also work great. It comes as a kit. It works great for getting door hinge pins out without using a hammer and a nail and all that, or a hammer and a screwdriver. So you'll sort of see how this operates here in just a second, but it's a spring-loaded nail punch. Very awesome tool. So I'm going to mark my spots in the center of the caning spline wherever I want to drill. And that will sort of, like I said, that'll help center where my drill bit's going to go. That way my drill bit's not going all over the place. So let's start by doing that. I've already got one right here in the center. And I'll probably do one every about 4 to 6 inches, but you know, you'll just sort of, sometimes the caning spline comes out real easy, so you may not have to do it that frequent. So I'm going to start by just doing one in the center of each side. Okay. So we got our centers marked. Now we're just going to drill it out. And usually when you're drilling in there, you'll feel when you get past the spline, and obviously stop there. You don't want to go all the way through the wood on the back side. And one more. There we go. So I've already got my steamer on, and it's ready to go. So just position that over the holes that we created. And you know it's working because you can obviously see the steam coming out of any joints going along the way. So that's how we know it's working real well. All right, we'll start with just a little bit and see how it works. And this is the caning chisel I referenced. I didn't show it to you, but this is a must-have for when you're getting rid of all the caning spline. It just fits perfectly in that groove. I think they're around 3/16 inch, but I'll obviously put a link to the description of where you can find this. This is a CS Osborne tool, specifically for removing caning spline. I jumped the gun. I forgot to cut out the caning. Like I said, it sort of gets in the way. So I'll go around the perimeter before I get too far and just sort of get it out of the way. All right, so now we've got the caning spline out. We're gonna take our chisel and sort of clean up everything along the edge, and then we'll sort of worry about getting the groove at the very end. But I'll tell you, I've done maybe a dozen of these before, the pressed cane, and that's the first time I've used the steam option to help loosen it up, and it makes a huge difference. If you think about it, you're really just sort of reactivating the glue and loosening that up. It's sort of like if you're dealing with antiques and you're trying to get joints apart, you always use a heat gun to try to get the glue loosened up when working with that. So it's sort of similar to that, but in my experience, that made it a lot easier using that steamer. And I'll put a link to the one we got. We got ours about a year ago, and this is the first time I've used it on caning, but it does a whole lot of good when trying to get that spline out of there. It just loosens it up and makes it come out a whole lot easier. So, but like I said, now we're going to take our chisel. We're just going to sort of go around and clean up all this on the edge, and then we'll try to take our chisel and get everything out of the groove at the very end. I also like to use my small scraper here, and it's a Baco 625. I'll put a link to that, but this thing is great for cleaning up glue joints, but it's a carbide scraper, and I've got a 7/8 inch blade on there right now, but I think it comes with a 1 inch. But these work great for removing glue, residue, and cleaning up little things like this. So I'm just gonna go through and finish cleaning up the groove, and that should get us to where we can take the caning chisel and go around all through the groove and finish it up. And obviously this probably goes without saying, but you want to be careful on your show wood. If you're worried about damaging it, maybe tape it off beforehand, especially if you don't know how to repair it. You know, you want to be extra careful when you're working with the scrapers, the chisels, that kind of thing. I should have said this before I started, but a good practice is to score along that edge before you start, because sometimes when you're chiseling out the old caning spline, you can accidentally take up the wood with the spline depending on how much glue they use, so you just want to be careful there. So they glued this caning in really well, and sometimes the only thing you can do is just sort of go around and work at it little by little, get a good sharp chisel, and you can, you know, chisel it out. So just little by little, but sometimes it's a mess, and if they used a good amount of glue, which is good for, you know, the longevity of your spline, but it can be a pain to get out sometimes. It's not always easy. So. right, we've got it all cleaned out. You want that groove nice and clean all the way around to make way for your new one. Yeah. Anyways, that's what it should or could look like when you're done. And next step is obviously to start installing the new cane. And what you want to do first, before you start putting it in there, is you want to soak your pressed cane and your spline for about 10 to 15 minutes to make it a little bit more pliable. And then we'll go from there. All right, so now we get to the installation of our sheet of pressed cane, which looks like so. And you can usually order these by the foot. They usually come in different size rolls, anywhere, you know, some are 16-inch wide like this, some are 24-inch wide, and then you just order it by the foot. So in this case, I just ordered 1 foot since we're working with a really small area. I think it was roughly 10-inch by 11-inch, something like that. But the first step you want to do, like I said, is soak your cane about 10-15 minutes. You'll get it nice and pliable. And what we want to do is we want to mark centers on our frame so that when we put down our cane, we will have a reference to go by. So if we put our fabric tape measure here, roughly working with 11 3/4 inch. So that's going to get us 6, just under 6. It'd be 5 7/8. Okay. Okay. Then we'll come down to the bottom and do the same thing. We'll mark our center here. Roughly 10-inch there. We'll mark our center. All right, so now we've got our 2 centers. Got a reference. And you'll want to order a couple different things. Something I strongly recommend are these caning wedges. And you'll see what those are for here in just a second, but basically they help you position the caning down into the grooves. It's going to say the reason you want that caning pliable is if it's too brittle, when you go to start putting it down into the small 3/16 inch groove or whatever size groove you're working with, if it's too brittle, it's going to snap your caning, and then you'll sort of be out of luck there. So that is the whole reasoning behind that. So we'll find our centers. We got our center there. Center there. And then we're going to go ahead and get it positioned down into the groove. Need my little rubber mallet here, or my wooden mallet. And I'm gonna go ahead and see if we can't get this wedged in there. Shift a little bit on me. Seems as if, probably because these 2 major lines are falling down into the groove, it's sort of interfering with it. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this side, and what I'm going to do before I get any further is I'm going to start snipping around all this excess that we're not going to end up needing. And these are a nice little pair of snips that come with a lot of these caning kits, and those are awesome for cutting the caning. And I usually snip it roughly 3/4 inch long past the groove, and that'll give you room to let it lay down into your groove and still have a little bit in there. So, and then at the very end, we'll go back around and sort of trim everything back with a nice sharp chisel. So what I like to do, once you sort of get that position down in there, I like to take out these excess strands, and that'll sort of help it go down into your groove a lot better. Sometimes these wedges are just a little bit too thin for these grooves. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna chop off just a hair on 2 of these, and I think that'll sort of help it stay a little bit better, because if you've probably already noticed that watching the video, it's completely loose in there, which is fine while I'm cutting it, as long as it's pretty close. But for what we're about to do, we need these to be fitting better. So I'm gonna cut 2 of those and be right back. Let's see if that works a little better. Oh yeah, see, I can already tell that is 100 times better. All right, so once you get the wedge on the front, the back, you've got your center line, make sure it's straight. What I do is I come through and I start taking out all these excess strands going around the outside, and that will help your caning go into the groove a lot easier when we get to it. You can take those diagonals off take the diagonal ones off as well if you didn't see that. That's what I was doing. Okay. Take that out for just a moment. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Got that. Almost done. Get these excess off over on this side and we'll be ready to start putting the caning into the groove. Another handy caning tool is going to be an awl, which sort of helps you pry underneath the caning if you need to. There we go. Okay. So when I get all those extra strands out of the way that I want to get out of the way, what I'm going to do next is go through and just use one of these wedges that I cut that fits into your groove, and you're just going to gently push your caning down into the groove all the way around. You may need your mallet for this as well, so I'll probably start, just to get the tension correct, I'm going to start on the side, and I'll do the other side, and then I'll just sort of work around to those other areas. Okay, so now we have gotten our caning into our groove all the way around. Now it's time to install our caning spline, which when you're ordering these, you'll measure your hole. Whenever you order this, the manufacturers usually put dimensions that correspond with, whatever you measure here corresponds with what size spline you'll need. So you'll want to measure the groove in your seat, and that'll determine obviously what kind of caning spline you need. In our case, we ordered the 3/16 inch, which is what we needed. So before we put our spline in, we want to put in our wood glue. So you're just going to carefully put some wood glue all the way into your groove, all the way around. You don't want to overdo it, because this is one of those situations where you don't want a lot of glue squeeze out to clean up at the end. It just makes for a huge pain. So just carefully, I would recommend getting a nice glue applicator bottle. These really help out. I don't know if you can see that, but it's got a nice thin tip, which makes it very easy to get glue into those grooves. So we'll just go around here and put a little bit of glue. And so what I like to do when I start my spline is start at the back center. Okay, so we like to start at the back center, and we'll just take that halfway mark that we drew earlier and start there. And this is another reason you really want your caning pliable for when you go around these 90-degree turns. You want it to be able to go in there nice and easy. If you hadn't soaked it, it would easily break when you try to make that turn. So before I get too far, I want to tap that down into the groove to help it stay. So just gonna go through, use those wedges, and just slightly tap it down into the groove. And something I forgot to mention on your caning spline, you'll probably notice this when you get it, but there's a skinny end and a fat end. You obviously want your fat end facing up, so it'll act as a wedge when you're putting it in there. Okay, so when you get to the end, you want to obviously overlap them and make your mark just on the other side of where you're going to cut. That way your pencil line won't be visible at all. And then just take your snips and snip it, and should be good to go. It's always better to cut it just a hair long, and if it's too long, you can cut it short. But if you cut it too short, you'll be out of luck. You'd have to fill it with some type of filler, which just doesn't look near as good. So just be careful at the end when you're measuring and cutting. Okay. Looks nice and straight. Okay, so we have finished putting in the caning spline, and the last step is, well, if you didn't mar up your finish and have to do touch-ups, your last step is going to be going around the perimeter and using a nice sharp chisel and just sort of working off any excess that's still hanging out of the back. So this is where a really sharp chisel will come in handy. Otherwise, you'll have a lot of trouble doing this. But you'll just sort of put your chisel back there and just sort of wiggle it back and forth, and we're gonna basically just cut off the excess that's back there. And we'll go around the whole perimeter and do that same thing. And that concludes our video. Like I said, if that'll be your last step unless you accidentally marred the wood somewhere. A good product you can use that I'll put a link in the description is if there's just minor scratches going around your frame anywhere. Obviously large chunks missing would be a different issue. That's why you got to be careful with the chisel. But if it's just minor scratches that marred the surface, Howard's Restore Finish is a really great product. So that'd be my last tip. So. All right, everybody, that concludes our video for today on how to replace a pressed cane seat. I hope this video helped you. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to comment below. We always answer all those. We'd be happy to help you. If you have any video suggestions for the future, we'd love to hear that also. And as always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so that you'll receive updates to our future videos. We definitely appreciate you watching today's video, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and comment. Thanks, y'all. Have a good day.